Definitely dropped on lucky with the weather today. Absolutely gorgeous. So I'm heading somewhere up there this evening, just for a quick overnighter. And throughout this video we'll be taking a look at some of my gear. I'll be discussing which things you really need to go camping and which things are more of a luxury than an essential. Not sure if you recognise this spot over here. Well, last time I pitched over there we had to scarper in the middle of the night because there was lightning all around us. But today I'm heading to a very cool spot over yonder. Told you it was a really cool spot. Look at these rock formations. It's like something from Jurassic Park. I don't know how I'm supposed to get over there. We'll give it a bash, shall we? Whoa. Shouldn't really be filming this, should I? It's better. Suppose I better find somewhere to pitch the tent. This looks a nice little spot for the tent. We've got a stunning view to go with it. So let's start off with the backpack. Now you could carry all your stuff up in carrier bags, or do a Tom Sawyer and wrap everything up in your blanket and put it on your shoulder on your stick. But I think when it comes to modern day camping, some kind of rucksack is an essential item. I wouldn't go rushing out and make your rucksack your first purchase. You're better off buying some of your other bigger things first, like a tent and a sleeping bag, and that way you'll know what size rucksack you're going to need to fit those items in. That's the tent pitched up. So you don't necessarily have to have a tent. There are other forms of shelter, such as a bivvy bag or a hammock, but you could bed down under a natural shelter or a tarp. But if you are just starting out on your camping journey, I do recommend you pick yourself up a tent. It'll keep you dry and out of the wind, and you can usually always find somewhere to pitch up. We may have some rain on the way. I'm going to get in the tent and cook some supper. Right, on the menu today we have tender stem broccoli tips, pepper army as a snack, salmon fillets. Got my Sea to Summit bowl, use that as a chopping board today. Been sent a new knife from Castron. This is gorgeous. It is a Lars Felt slip joint knife, curly birch handles, and it's UK legal as well. Very sharp as expected. I know you're going to tell me that these are the best bit, but I don't eat the stalks. So if you ever need to cook inside your tent, always make sure it's well ventilated. Carbon monoxide is a killer, so make sure you've got decent airflow and you don't have the stove running for too long. That's veggies done. Keep getting told off for not seasoning my food. I reckon that is job done. That looks bang on. Anyone hungry? Fish is cooked perfect. That was far superior to those dehydrated meals that I normally have. Now you've seen what having a stove and a frying pan can do, but do you really need one when you come camping? Having a cooked meal or a hot drink is really good for the morale when you're camping. But a stove is a luxury item. You can get away with making sandwiches and eating energy bars and things like that. And if you're just starting out, I wouldn't go and boom 100 quid straight away on something like this. I'd start off with something like a transient alcohol stove or a cheap gas stove you can get from most outdoor shops. So in the morning when we've got a bit more light, we'll see what we really need from all the rest of the gear. Morning campers. Looks like we might be in for a bit of a treat this morning. Look at that. Cloud inversion and a sunrise. I'll take that. I've had the worst starts to the day. Does it get any better than this? You can see why I bought the sand coloured tent. I think it blends in really well. So yesterday we spoke about shelter, backpack and a stove. Have a look at some of this sleeping kit, shall we? I reckon that getting a good night's kip is one of the most important things when you come camping. And a comfortable sleeping mat or pad will definitely help you do that. But it's not just about the comfort, you do need some kind of insulating layer between you and the ground below. If you didn't have that, then the ground will start to sap away your body heat through conduction. So this particular pad doesn't offer that much insulation, to be honest. So a sleeping pad or a mat is definitely an essential bit of kit. You don't have to spend big bucks. Just one of those cheap roll mats will do the job, although it might not be as comfortable as an inflatable pad. So next on the agenda is a sleeping bag. So I always bring either a sleeping bag or a quilt. I have managed on some really hot evenings to sleep without one, but that's not the norm. And for the most part you'll find that you need something to keep you warm at night. So I do recommend that you get a sleeping bag that's rated to the temperatures that you're going to be sleeping in. So what else we got in here? Pillows. I'm a pillow man. Now these are definitely a luxury item. They're not an essential. Many a time I've just used a fleece or a coat to rest my head on. But you can get them that pack down to nothing now, so for the sake of a tenner or so, I like to have that bit of extra comfort. So here's another non-essential item. A power bank. You should really be coming up here to get away from all the technology and stuff. But I bring my camera along, so I need something that's going to keep my gadgets charged up. But it's not something that you really need. More non-essentials. This doesn't weigh anything, and it makes certain tasks around the tent a little handier. So I've got a nice flat surface to put my mug on. Weighs a couple of grams and takes up no space. But Mother Nature's got plenty of tables on her own, so you don't need anything fancy. So you're better off saving your money until you know you're really into the hobby. Get the stove into the dry bag. So here's another thing that you don't really need. You can spend 20-30 quid on a dry sack, and you could just use a simple bin liner to get you started. I do recommend having something to keep your sleeping bag etc. dry. So if you don't want to spend big bucks on these, just use a couple of bin liners. Fancy folding spoons, pot grippers, more stuff that you don't really need. Take a spoon out of the kitchen drawer and use a handkerchief or a bandana to pick your warm pots up. Now this is an essential item. Carrier bag, so you can take all your rubbish home with you. When you leave your campsite, there should be no trace that you've been there. That means taking all your crap home with you. A water filter. Again, this is a non-essential item. If you don't want to shell out on a water filter, just make sure you bring enough water with you for your trip. But bear in mind, 1 litre of water adds another kilo of weight to your pack. So if you don't want to be carrying loads of water up these big hills, then a water filter might be a good investment, although not essential. And if you've got one of those other non-essential items, a stove, you can always boil some up. What about fancy down jackets and expensive Gore-Tex coats? It might be frowned upon if you don't take something like that, surely. Well, you definitely need suitable clothing for the conditions, but you don't have to spend silly money on all the designer brands. Although the technology is very good, you can get away with just a cheap poncho or raincoat. Same again when it comes to footwear. A good pair of boots is a good investment, but there's been many a time when I've just come out in trail runners, which essentially is a souped up name for a pair of trainers. Now if you're walking up Jacob's ladders in trainers, 99 times out of 100 you're going to be perfectly fine. But some of this landscape up here is rather boggy, so you might want to invest in a pair of decent boots. Same rules applies for gloves. They don't need to be fancy ones like these, but sometimes doing fiddly tasks like putting a tent up without gloves in the cold can be hard work. So I'd get something to cover your hands. I'm going to put this down as an essential. You're going to be spending any time overnight in a tent. For safety reasons, you're going to need to be able to see where you're going. So get yourself a head torch. It doesn't have to be mega expensive, and you can get lanterns like this for inside your tent for a couple of quid. Looking after your health and hygiene is essential. So I always carry a basic first aid kit, painkillers, plasters, emergency blanket, hand warmers, tick remover. It's essential that you take toilet paper with you and some way of digging a hole. Wouldn't be one of my videos without showing you this. You're going to want something to drink out of. Doesn't have to be a fancy mug though. You could just bring one from the kitchen cupboard or drink from your water bottle. But be careful if you bring in some kind of porcelain. As you know, rucksacks get knocked about a lot, so you don't want broken bits of glass and pottery in your bag. Tell it was misty last night. So the last thing for the pack is my little stool. So having somewhere to sit is essential, right? But the landscape provides you with most of the chairs. You could sit here and get a wet bum, or find yourself a nice big rock or a tree stump. So although this is a very cool little item for a couple of 100 grams, it's not an essential. Can you tell where the tent was? How do I get home? Which brings me on to the last thing to talk about, which is navigation. So I haven't had to look at View Ranger or a map because I'm very familiar with this area. But if that mist was all up here and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, that would be a whole different kettle of fish. So it's essential that you know where you're going. And it's also essential that your loved ones know where you're going. So if anything was to happen, they'd be able to send for help. So I've got fancy watches and apps on my phone to do most of my navigation. But if it's somewhere I'm not familiar with at all, I always get the OS map and take a compass with me as well. So there are things in my pack that you've not seen today, but I think we've discussed the main things that you need or you don't need. The best thing to do is do your homework, work out the things that work best for you, and then test it out in the safety of a campsite or your back garden so you know that your kit works. Alright, so I'm off to the day job. So I'll leave you with these gorgeous misty hills. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.